To be able to follow along with ease, ensure you download Prototype 3 starter files in the video description. You will notice 4 folders inside Course Library folder in the Asset panel: Characters, Obstacles, Particles, and Sound. Double-click on Prototype 3 in the Scenes folder. Use the mouse wheel to zoom out and press Alt and left-click to rotate the background game objects in the right perspective. Now change the workspace to tall and drag the game panel to the bottom and release the moment the game panel aligned at the bottom. Next, select the background and change it to other available options you prefer. For the sake of this class, I am going to go with the default option. There are lots of characters for you to choose from. I will drag the road walker to the hierarchy instead of directly to the scene. This will ensure the position and rotation are at 0. Change the name in the inspector to walker. And set rotation to 90 degrees. This will position the character in the right direction. In order to make the player jump over obstacle, we will add 2 components: rigid body and box collider. Create a player controller script in the script folder. Select the walker game object and add the script components to it. Then double-click the script in the projects panel area or directly in the inspector. This will launch Microsoft Visual Studio Integrated Development Environment. Until now, we are fond of calling method on the transform component such as transform.translate. And since we want to control the force and gravity of the walker game object, let's call the method on the player's rigid body component. Now let's declare reference to the player rigid body and let's call it player RB. In the start method, let's assign the rigid body reference variable to the rigid body component itself. And remember, without this line of code, an error will be thrown because the rigid body cannot be accessed. This line simply means use getComponent method to find the rigid body component from the inspector of this game object. In this case, we are referring to the rigid body component we added to the walker game object earlier. Now, with the rigid body at our disposal through its instance player RB, let's control the force property in the void start method. Simply use player RB and with the dot operator, select add force. And since this add force method accepts physics related parameters, let's use vector3.up and multiply it by 30. Note, 30 is our speed literal to start with. Save your work and return to Unity to try it out. Since it moves slightly, let's increase the speed from 30 to 700. And this time around, the jump force is great. And if for some reasons you forgot to add rigid body component, this will throw an error. And to demonstrate, let's remove this component from the inspector. The program will throw missing component exception error. In other words, there is no rigid body attached to the worker game object. Remember what I told you about the get component method, which was trying to find the rigid body. And in the process, it couldn't find the rigid body on the game object. Hence, this missing component exception error was thrown. Do well to try out all that you've learned in this video. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the comment section. So that'll be all on this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.